uh, I'm hoping I pronounced this correctly. Abhishek and S. and Amal Joy are presenting Breaking and Defending uh, Cloud Infrastructure, Red Team Evasion Tactics and Access Control Solutions. Abhishek X is a security engineer at Flipkart with primary research focus in application security and red teaming. He is a staff of Adversary Village at DEF CON and an executive member of DC 0471 group. He has been a speaker for, God, I can't read all of a sudden. Let me fix this. Where was I here? He's a speaker for various conferences like CoCon 23 and Black Hat MEA 23, with over 4 years of experience playing CTFs and hunting for vulnerabilities in various VDP programs. He's listed in Hall of Fames of Google, Facebook, Microsoft, and 40 plus organizations for finding their security vulnerabilities. He's about 4 CVEs from various organizations such as Android, Tenable, Strap, STR API, CMS, etc. Currently holds various certifications such as OSCP, BSCP, CRTP, GAC, GFACT, etc. Other than the technical side, he loves to travel around the world and is an automotive enthusiast. Oh, well, we have that in common because I'm an ex-recovering gearhead myself. Amal Joy is a security engineer at High Radius. His area of research falls into infrastructure security, red teaming in multi-cloud environments, and corporate networks. He also loves spending leisure time on malware development. Wow, that is really cool. He is an executive member of DC 0471, DEF CON group. He has over 3 years of experience in playing CTFs and also hosted many hiring multi-cloud adversary CTFs in reputed conferences like Seaside 22, with strong focus on multi-cloud and Active Directory. He currently holds various certifications like CARTP, MCRTA, CCRTA, and EJPT. So I'd like to welcome both of our speakers to the stage, and please take it away.
Thank you, X-Ray.
Strong focus on multi-cloud and Active Directory. He currently holds various certifications like CARTP, MCRTA, CCRTA, and EJPT. So I'd like to welcome both of our speakers to the stage, and please take it away.
Hello, folks. So our presentation is on the topic breaking and defending cloud infrastructure, optimization tactics, and access control solutions. Before we start, let me introduce myself. I am Abhishek, a security engineer at Flipkart, a Walmart company, and staff at the Adversary Village at DEF CON 29 to 32. And with me, it's Amal Joy, Honey Badger, who is a security engineer at a leading fintech. So the agenda of the talk would be to cover an introduction to cloud red teaming, then services we can target for stealth, evasion techniques that can be applied in cloud environments like AWS and GCP. Then we would also discuss about some defensive strategies and access control mechanisms that you could implement in those environments, and a case study. Over to Amal Joy for the pre-introduction job.
Sure. Yeah. The pre-introduction tab is nothing but we are just giving a heads up regarding why this presentation, what the presentation is up to you guys. And yeah, think of a situation where your company with your multi-million dollar worth of enterprise security controls hosted compute instance is compromised, and the attacker get into the multi-cloud environment, laterally moved across different services, manipulated your logging service, exfiltrated gigs of data, and all this happens in a matter of 45 minutes, and still your blue team is still clueless. So yeah, that's what currently our experience goes into. And now, before jumping into the introductory part, we just want to knowledge. We just want to showcase what this particular slides and presentation will be giving you. So it will be an yeah, going in an introductory mode rather than talking in detail about the various evasion techniques. So we will be going in an introductory mode about the low hanging fruits. So let's start about introduction to Cloud Red Team. So you can see here. So what Cloud Red Team it is, in simple, we can say it's like simulating real world attack scenarios on cloud environments to test and improve security defenses. So it mainly targets the security controls that is being placed to understand, okay, if a cloud based attack is happened, how will you defend it? So do we have cloud based solutions such as SCP policies which will be discussed by Abhishek on the last slides, and also regarding the what all are the other security controls like SIM tool, like Azure Sentinel, Secure Onyx, etc., uh, uh, which can give a critical part on this particular case, right? So, what actually, how does a red team in cloud infrastructure differ from other, like which is on corporate network? It's based on encode and it's based on permission of users, right? So that's a difference mainly. So maybe some of your companies might have your company might be telling like, okay, your end call is to exfiltrate something from S3, but at some point some company might say like, okay, your end call is to get maximum privilege, right? How you can do. So yeah, we will be discussing some of the techniques regarding AWS and GCP now. Yeah, Abhishek, over to the, can you point to the next slide? Yeah. Services targeted for slide. So yeah, mostly as I can, so as we talked, uh, there are the low hanging fruits are really important when we are performing cloud red teaming, right? So some of the services how you can abuse, it plays a vital role on how you will be in a stealth mode when you are doing cloud red teaming, particularly in AWS and GCP, right? So there are one of the four main uh, services which might be targeted by attackers for that they can have a stealth mode on when they are targeting certain services on the multi-cloud infrastructure. One is AWS Cloud Trail API calls, of course, you know, right? And there is IAM API calls are there. Also, Cloud Logging S3 Bucket API calls, which of course will be pointing to the Cloud Trail API calls. Then for the GCP, the IAM Service Account API calls. So we will discussing like how an attacker can abuse these particular API calls and make sure that okay, your SIM or your access control policies that you are implemented on the organizational level will not be won't be of no use. Like at least we can move on in a stealth mode, right? So we are making sure that always the low hanging fruits does matters. Okay, yeah, I'm sure go on to the next page. So evasion techniques in AWS. Yeah. So one of the important point while we were doing red team engagements where rather than going to admin access, think of a situation when your SOC team, when they were asked about an attack scenario, they were not able to fetch certain logs in order to prove that, okay, what all was lost from their multi-cloud infrastructure. So one of the important API call is put event selectors API calls on the CloudTrail. So what this API calls do, when for example, you can uh, tell the particular cloud trail to include okay which all services from which you can what all logs should be fetched from which all services. So if an attacker gain control of this put even selectors API calls, for example, if an attacker gain control of your certain automation role, or maybe your instance is compromised and that attacker fetch the instance profile role and that role is our privilege. The one of the important point rather than getting into administrator access is whatever he does with the privilege he has, at least we need to make sure that we are in line with what he is doing, right? The blue team knows that what he is doing. Think of a situation where the put event selectors API calls, he has a permission for example, maybe certain privilege on the cloud trail, and he was able to manipulate the put event selectors to make sure that certain services that the logs are being pointed out. He was able to manipulate. And what happens now is the excluded services which are added on the put event selectors will not be logged. That means maybe your CloudTrail is being pointed to your SIM and it won't be able to fetch the details from there. So what will happen? Whatever exfiltration techniques you have done. So in our team engagements, we were able to laterally move, privilege, escalate everything. But when we have pulled down these put event selectors and abused these put event selectors and do our exfiltration techniques, what happened was when we reached for purple team activities for the SOC team, they were not able to see what we have done. So that brings a real question that, okay, what all was exfiltrated from the multi-cloud infrastructure or the cloud infrastructure. The second part was this include two things. On most of, as I said, it is conditional because we need a certain condition that your organization has deployed honey tokens on your AWS services, AWS infrastructures, and how we are able to bypass honey tokens, right? There will be dummy user that will be created, which is there will be no privilege. So what will happen if an attacker gain access to that particular key or a role or whatever it is? What will happen? It will provide an explicit DNI because there won't be any permission. So this error log will be tracked from CrowdTrail to your SIM tool or whatever it is, then the SOC team will be alerted. But in AWS, there are certain services where CrowdTrail integration can't be possible. AWS import certain VPC specific policies. So what will happen if an attacker, for example, for basic enumeration itself, if you want to get the if you want to if you want to get the basic information regarding your account ID, your user ID, etc., hitting the STS endpoint, everything, basic enumeration without getting logged into the CloudTrail, he can try to hit that particular API endpoints. Even if it is an error that is being fetched, it will give, okay, this particular account ID is not able to access this particular thing. So the basic information is being given. Coming to the point that honey tokens, okay, that particular account is being created as a honey account, but the trial, because we hit on a particular service which is not being supported to CloudTrail log integration. So what will happen? It won't be going into SIM as, okay, this guy hit this particular honey user. So we can detect that, okay, this particular, using this technique by proxying through the service that is not supported by CloudTrail, we can detect that, okay, this particular user is being used by honey token, used as a honey user. So that's one thing. And the next thing was the crucial point, as I told, like stop log. I mean, low hanging fruits are really important. We will be surprised that at some point of time, even you have some implementation for purple teaming, many of the organization what they felt is, okay, if a stop log API, like that's a basic thing, right? If a stop log API calls that hit that on a trial, maybe it's a multi-trial setup that is being on your AWS account, and maybe when you hit one trial, that what I faced in a red team engagement was when you hit a trial, I didn't expect that trial to go down. I expect that particular SOC team to respond as soon as possible. But what happened was, uh, by hitting one stop log API on a trial on a region, uh, the entire trial on every region went down, and SOC was not identified because they have they were facing difficulty in properly integrating the stop log API calls into the SIM. Yeah, so that is one of the important point where if the low hanging fruits regarding the stop log API, I'm saying, if that is not being detected, that means the whole attack scenario won't be detected. So it is really rare that stop log API calls are not being properly configured on the SIM, but still we can detect also using, like we can also give a block using SCP policies, which will be discussed by Abhishek. Yeah, Abhishek, next. Okay, the next point was compromising the AWS role. And if an attacker was able to proxy that AWS role, the trust relationship to an externally controlled attacker controlled account. So what will happen now is, here the external account, right? Whatever we are trying to abuse, like we will just create a role, give them random name, and make sure that this role can be assumed from external account. So what will happen now is, the organization has a limitation. It all comes with a certain offensive assessment we have. And the organization has an issue where maybe they have a dependency on maybe their one parent account and they have child accounts will be there, and there is one child from one child account they should be able to assume a particular role from another account, so they can't restrict trust relationship there. So what SIM can do here is to make sure that okay, our organization has this much account IDs. If any use attacker uh, does this particular uh, attack by using any account ID other than our particular account IDs, our organizational account ID, they can block. But our experience was when we were trying to give the external account ID, the attack was not detected until, and even famous, like we are not pointing out the names of certain tools. Certain tools was giving the critical because the role can assume administrator access indirectly. So the certain CSPM tools and cloud security tools was giving them as a medium priority because the external account was able to assume certain roles. So what will happen? The SOC team might feel like okay, this is a just a assumed role that being assumed by one of our account IDs. So we shouldn't be able to we shouldn't be taken it as it is serious because yeah, this particular technique was of greater importance for us because using these techniques we were able to and this technique and the put even selectors technique combined with combining this particular technique to put even selectors technique, most of the organization where we have done offensive assessment, we were able to at least get hold of their services for at least for a few hours without being getting detected. Yeah, Abhishek, next. So yeah, the evasion techniques in GCP, which will be discussed by Abhishek now. Over to you, Abhishek.
Yeah, so uh, Amal has already went through the evasion techniques for AWS platform. Now let's check out the techniques for GCP. One of the key techniques would be by leveraging service account impersonation. This would be done by abusing the particular role that is called IAM service account token creator. The attacker will be able to abuse this by carrying out activities using a highly privileged service accounts identity. If this type of role is being abused, then it would make it really challenging for the security tools and SEM systems to detect the malicious activity because from the point of view of a SOC team or SIEM systems, it would more look like the actions were done using a genuine service account. Now let's move over to the defense strategies and access controls for both AWS and GCP. One of the key defense mechanisms that we can implement here would be the service control policies. Service control policies that we can implement at the organization level would prevent abuse of specific API calls that can be used by threat actors for malicious purposes or out of the box purposes than its intended usage. Aman has already discussed about some of the API calls like put event selectors or stop logging that could be abused by a threat actor if he is able to call those APIs in your cloud environment. So, as a measure to defend against that, you can stick to service control policies in the OU level, which would restrict what all specific API calls can be triggered by the components in your OU. This is a powerful defense strategy against such API call abuses. And another method would be to focus on IAM standardization by uh, having a standardized set of identity and access management policies and procedure set for managing the permissions and identities. It will be more of a defensive approach where it would be hard for attackers to abuse certain extra permissions that are being assigned or API calls that can be used to abuse. And another defense strategy that we can perform in AWS is one of the key features, key security features. That's AWS permission boundary. This is a feature that would help you to define what would be the maximum permission that a role or an IAM user can do. In case of roles, it would be the maximum permission that the role that the particular user who can assume the role can perform after assumption of the role. So if the permission boundaries are set, even if some extraneous permissions are set by another entity to that particular IAM user or role, it won't be able to do actions that it is not capable of, because the permission boundary will make it to stick to the uh, restrictions that are set in the boundary. So only the maximum level of permissions that is defined in the boundary would be what the IAM user or role can have. Another feature would be service account segmentation. So by implementing service account segmentation and principles of least privilege, we will be able to make sure that uh, service account related abuses are prevented. This can be done by segmenting service accounts properly and only assigning them necessary permissions that are required for the specific tasks. We generally use service accounts for automation. So when we are creating service accounts, we should make sure that the permissions are aligned up and only the permissions for specific tasks or the business use case should be assigned to the service account. By following the principle of least privilege, this segmentation can be done. And another method would be purple teaming. As you all are aware, um, when the red team and blue team are combinedly working, the red team would simulate a realistic attacks on the cloud environment, and the corresponding blue team of your organization can work to detect and respond to these threats. This would give both the teams a great idea on who is really ahead in the chart, like what all are the controls we are lacking, or what all are the controls in place that can be bypassed, etc. This would be testing your security posture, and this will give you a future roadmap on uh, how the security posture can be improved by making the security controls currently in place strong, also by bringing in new controls that are necessary. Since the red team would be simulating the actions of a real attacker, it would help to understand how or what would be the actions that the real attacker would perform in your environment after he or she gets access to your cloud environment. This would also test the effectiveness of the SIEM rules that the SOC team is having, and would also significantly improve incident response capabilities over time. That's all about the defense part. Now let's move over to the case study. We know it's getting late, so over to Amal Joy.
Yep. So yeah, without a case study, I think our uh, uh, won't be of a good finish. So Abhishek, yeah, forward to it. Can you take the next slide? Yeah, so in case study, we are just trying to make up a particular scenario that we faced and we compromised when we were doing certain red team engagements. So one of the scenario we are just making it front of you. So what happened here was we were able to the initial access. We were the end goal of the engagement was to exfiltrate certain sensitive informations and to move as long as we can, and most probably, and also there we have to check the enterprise security controls capability that the organization has, and the access controls the organization implement on the cloud level. So what happens here was on the initial access we were not given anything. So what we did was we enumerated externally to make sure that okay, what all things are publicly exposed on the organization. So on the initial part, we were able to find some applications which are not of any use, but for our surprise, that organization was using one of the enterprise security control. There was a DLP. So I'm not specifically saying which was the particular DLP owner. So we were able to find DLP based remote code execution there. So, and using the remote code execution, what we were able to do, we were able to get into that particular DLP based externally hosted DLP server, and where the most beautiful part was that instance was there as usual. We expected as a cloud security researcher and offensive security engineer, we were able to try. Okay, it's a cloud engagement. It's not a network based engagement. So we want to stick to the cloud services. So what we did? Okay, let's try to fetch if there is any web identity there, and using that web identity, are we able to use that web identity to assume a role which is being attached to that particular instance. So we found a web identity which we used to get the role which was being attached to this particular instance, and we were able to fetch the uh, instance profile role credentials, and we get into this particular AWS account. It was there, the DLP instance was hosted on the one of their AWS instance, and we were able to fetch the role credentials using the web identity which they were using as a basic restriction, where web identity was clubbed to their cognito. And what happened after assuming the role was, we were able to get the role credentials, and we started enumerating the role credentials, and we were sure that as it is a DLP based instance and the instance profile role attached was for an enterprise security control which was managed by security professionals, we expect that okay, security professionals will take everything on for granted at some point, because we never expect attacks on us, attack on us, right? So there are so many blogs also in recent times, like when hunter got hunted. So it was that case where we just got the role credentials and we tried to get okay, what all are the privileges. We were having low privilege one, but one of the API which was being abused, one of the IAM API, which was being abused to escalate our privilege. But what we have done instead of maximizing our privilege was we just attached a certain role for CloudTrail. So that okay, let's abuse CloudTrail. Then after that, let's attach certain our privilege, like for example, IAM full access or maybe admin access or maybe certain service we need. So we attach certain abusing CloudTrail API permissions. And what we did was we have used here, we have, as our priority is to secure the organization, we try to make sure that okay, what how this particular SOC team will uh, or their SOC team will respond. So we use the put event selectors API abuse, and also the stop log API abuse, and for our luck, both was successful, and stopping one of the trials on one region stopped trials on every region, and that was unexpected. And this was not being added as an SCP policy, as Abhishek said. The SCP policy was not properly configured so that the users, other than certain infrastructure engineers who are capable of starting and stopping logs, shouldn't be able to touch or stop certain services, especially the sensitive API calls like put event selectors API and stop log API. And we were successfully, and keep in mind that our strong focus is to secure the organization. We came to the conclusion that of course we need to make sure that business is not being impacted. We have to make sure that at least it should be stopped for at least 15 to 20 minutes or 30 minutes. We have to fasten our process so that any other issues that is being happened on their multi-cloud infrastructure shouldn't be affected because we are stopping the logs here. But considering the other part, we have to understand that is their SOC team will be able to identify that time, because we have to make sure that okay, rather than an organization getting affected with a 30-minute or 45 minutes red team engagement, think of a situation this top log API part is not being properly configured, or the put event selectors API part is not being properly configured, and the attacker used this for maybe 1 week or 48 hours, and still the SOC team is not able to know like okay, what is going on, right? It's better than getting the 2 weeks uh, uh, like okay, there are no logs, what is happening to my trial, what happened now, uh, who has done what. So rather than guessing or waiting for attack to happen, what we have done, okay, we have to let them know that if a attacker having 30-45 minutes what he can do. So what we have done after abusing the cloud trial API, next what we have done is okay, now we are in control, means none of the logs will be going to the SIM tool, maybe Securonix, maybe Azure Sentinel they are doing. What they will do, because from the cloud trial they will be pushing the logs to S3, then pointing that to the SIM tool, right? So there is no logs that is being going to the SIM now. So what we have done now, an external role backdoor for the persistence. We have again emulated a scenario where from our own personal account, we have created an user which can assume certain role that is being created on the target organization, right? So what we have done then, okay, we have created the backdoor there and we assumed the role from there. From our account, we were able to assume role from the target organization. Then we attach a particular privilege. Maybe we can attach any privilege like admin privilege, which is of great noise, I will say. But what is the scenario here? That is important because now we are not getting detected. So adding uh, administrator access or any access after manipulating the cloud trial API logs, that doesn't makes any noise now because the SOC team is not able to get what you are doing, right? So our thinking skills remains, manual thinking skills is really important when you are performing red team engagement. So after putting the external rollback door with high privilege, we try to now laterally move across different services, exfiltrate sensitive informations from certain services, including secret manager, S3, everything. And the most important part was they were storing we accelerated secret from secret manager everything, and they were storing certain GCP service account key on one of their services, and that was a cruel point from us because we don't want that to be compromised there. And what happened next was the service account which was compromised, and we got access, and now it's a cloud to cloud lateral movement. From AWS, we were able to move into their GCP account, and and we everyone knows that for GCP, like AWS has their boundary across account IDs, right? Different accounts is their boundary, and GCP that is in project level, right? Different projects marks the permission, the boundary of boundary. Like for example, you shouldn't be able to access a production project from a non-prod project, right? For example, you shouldn't be able to. The restriction should be there. You shouldn't be able to jump from one AWS account to another AWS account. So on the account level, we have security boundary. Here on the project level, GCP will be implementing the security boundary. But after we have enumerated the service account, we were not able to get some access. But the most important point was, I think, for some automations for certain third-party vendor-based, they have created the service account on a non-prod environment, and that service account were having token impersonation privilege, and that was crucial for us. And the best part was they were creating a particular service account, and that service account was a common service account because when we enumerated service account, we listed non found so many service accounts. And what happened now was one of the service account on our non-prod project, they have created as a common service account, and this service account is having access to prod project also. So we impersonated one of the service account, and that service account was common for the non-prod project and the production project. We impersonated the production, that particular service account. Upon enumeration, got the token. We just jumped from non-prod to prod production service account, project there. So what happened was we were not having any honor role on that service non-prod project. But the beautiful part of GCP was, and the company which gives us this offensive assessment was, they were using inbuilt roles for GCP, which is of no surprise because, of course, we don't want, like, it's a difficult task, right? At some point, like we have to create custom roles for certain people. But here, the fate was against them. The issue was we were the particular account which was compromised was having editor role access on the non-prod project and also editor role access on the uh, uh, production project. So the big issue was we were not able to impersonate the token, but the editor role has a particular role called user creation. That means there is no impersonation happen. We can create a key for the user. So what happens when you don't have impersonation, but you have an extra key? You can create an extra key for any user in your account. Means it's again a huge privilege. They have restricted the token impersonation privilege on the editor role, but there is token creation where key creation, sorry, the JSON key creation, you can create any additional key for a service account on that particular project. So token impersonation is different, key creation is different. Again, it acts as a backdoor as well. The extra key we are giving, any user who creates that particular service account will be having one key on their hand, but we also have another key on our hand. That means the people who is the owner of that particular service account will be authenticating using that key, and we will be using our backdoor key. But using this privilege, even though we have editor role, we were able to add the a service account which has owner privilege on the particular role. And what happened? There are entire production project was compromised because of that. And after that, we stealthily exfiltrated secrets from there. And the beauty of this was, on this particular thing, as we defended the CloudTrail, I mean, we abused the CloudTrail API calls, the logs from that part remains as a mystery. Like, okay, what happened? They have to reach to us to make sure that, okay, what all we have done. Of course, we have shared them the report. We have made sure that, okay, purple teaming is done properly to make sure that the organization is well capable now. And because of this FT acceleration, it has from an attacker who has access to nothing, has now compromised their AWS environment and their production GCP project too. So it was a multi-cloud attack which was done from nowhere and resulted in critical exfiltration without getting detected. Even though some part of the GCP exfiltration was detected, but as it is a service account impersonation, it's more of like as Abhishek said, it's more of like a proxy. What happened was they were thinking like, okay, it's a legitimate account, so there will be a service account which is being trying to fetch certain things on the project. And the most critical part on doing assessment using CLI and console comes here. Because when you are opening CLI, at the same time you are hitting thousands of API calls, right? So that itself is being at some point when a stock of like not that much uh, big quality, or if they don't know that much big picture of red team assessment, they might feel like, okay, a user with console access, he's trying, there's so many API calls are being reset. But when you are trying to authenticate with CLI, you are specifically hitting certain API calls only. And that too, you are abusing CloudTrail and making particular impersonation, that they will think like, okay, there is not much traffic and this is boxing going on. So in order to detect it, as Abhishek said, there are so many methods like segmentation and SCP policies, which is really, really important. And for example, we can build certain architecture solutions for trying to defend against cloud exfiltration, like maybe some DLP solution or DLP exfiltration. Yeah, that's it from our end. Yeah, Abhishek, yeah. Uh, if anybody have any queries, like, can answer it.
Thank you all for listening. Uh, Anyone got any questions or query
Or
for us?
everything. Yeah.
Doc, I'm just not familiar with the subject enough to have any like constructive questions. I need to do some more learning. But it was clear to me I could follow you on everything. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Bandwidth.
Thank you, Bandwidth. Yeah.
I have left out LinkedIn URLs of both of us in the chat. in case any of you want to connect over.
Don't be shy. If anybody has any questions, bring them up now. Well, thank you, Abhishek and Amal. That was an excellent presentation, all the way from India.
Thank you,
Yeah,
X-Ray.
thank you, X-Ray. Thank
Yeah,
you.
they're from DC 0471 in Trivandrum, India.